Hey everyone, welcome to Queerly Recommended. I'm Tara Scott, and I am back as always with Kris Bryant.
Hello, welcome to episode 18, where we are now legal in both Canada and the United States. Well, legal to vote.
I know, I'm like, legal for even in most of
gamble at 18, can't you? Is gambling legal at 18? I don't know. Oh no, it's 21 here, but like 20 or like 18 in the Virgin Islands or something.
Well, let's go. Oh wait, I can go wherever I want if I feel like gambling. In Alberta, where I live, you can drink.
Oh, okay. So it's a drinking age.
Mm-hmm. Only here though. The rest of Canada is 19, as far as I know.
That's so weird. We're 21 here.
I know. So yeah, 21 there. I grew up right on one of the border cities. I think we might have talked about that before. I grew up in the Windsor, Detroit, like in the Windsor side of the Windsor, Detroit border area. And the bars were so obnoxious with all the American kids that would come over to get hammered. I was like, go away. What are you doing?
Well, I grew up in Europe and there was no drinking age really. So they didn't give beers to babies, but
yeah,
it was weird to go to like a street carnival. A lot of towns had, the yearly little carnival, street carnival type thing. And you'd see these like 10, 12-year-old kids drinking beer and Fanta, which is a big drink over there. They mix it. It's weird.
Ew.
It sounds gross, but it's like the only way I'll drink beer. Isn't that weird?
That sounds really gross. I think I'd rather just not have beer.
But also, it's the European Fanta, not like the U.S. fully sugared, Fanta.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's a different type of Fanta.
Yeah. So you're basically just like sweetening it and carbonating it a
little bit. Yeah, you're sweetening it with a little bit of orange. It's like Blue Moon, the beer, Blue Moon. You'll put an orange slice in it, and make it yummy.
Yeah. I mean, I think also part of the attraction of Windsor is what was lovingly referred to as the Windsor Ballet, which is actually just like all the strip clubs. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah. With like it would also attract what am I trying to say? Bachelor parties. It would attract bachelor parties from Ohio because the stripping there is just different than I guess in some of the states.
That's crazy. Yeah, nice. So they're part of the Stampede then, right?
Right?
Okay.
Right. So I mean, Stampede moving here wasn't actually that jarring. I never actually went to the strippers though, and I still don't regret that choice.
Good for you.
Yeah, I don't know. They're always there.
They are.
If for whatever reason I desperately felt like it, but you can also just go to Pride every year.
Can I tell you the story about when I went on a date with a stripper? Can I tell you the story?
Yes. Okay. In fact, I insist that you tell this story.
So I was maybe 28, and it was somebody I met online. Mm-hmm. And I remember
So it was 2 years ago.
Right, 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago. I met the stripper online.
That's right.
And it was a really weird experience because I can't remember if I knew that she was a stripper or not. I don't think I did know. And I think it was really interesting because there was somebody, I was somewhere, I was at a bar maybe, and there was somebody else that I had dated that they were there. Mm-hmm. And she was like, let's make them jealous. I mean, it's like any TV show you've ever seen in your life, where like, oh, let's make them jealous and we'll just kind of make out and stuff. So that kind of happened. And then she was like, so can I get you to co-sign on some furniture? And I'm like, goodbye.
No. So you know what that means? The stripping is the absolute least interesting part.
Right. Here's the shitty part. I was like, for like a second, I was like, that's not such a bad idea. I'm like, what are you thinking now?
Oh,
so that was the end of that. Yeah. So we did not, I don't think we went out after that. I'm pretty sure we didn't.
That's fair. I mean, that's a red flag, right? That's right up there with like, hey, we've been dating a month. What if we got married? Although my parents did that after less than a month. So what am I saying? As I was saying it out loud, I was like, yeah. And then there's my parents who got engaged 21 days after they met. They're still together though.
That's nice.
And they're still really happy. But they met. And when they met, my dad was hung over. So this like hung over man.
Was was like the best thing for your mom.
Yeah, goes to have a meal at this restaurant that my mom is waitressing at. She was like 18 at the time, and he's a few years older than her. And he asked her, and she was like, what the hell? And then I guess, they say they just knew, but this was like, it would have been May or June. And they wanted to get married the following December. And my grandma said, but does the wedding have to be then? Basically saying, are you pregnant?
Are you pregnant? Yeah.
Because they'd been down that path before with both aunts and uncles. And they were like, no, it's fine. So they got married the following May, basically just proving that mom wasn't getting married because she was pregnant. So,
that's funny.
But yeah, they're, 40. How many years have they been married now? More than 42, because that's my age.
More than 42.
44. They've been married for 44 years.
Wow, good for them.
And they're very, very happy. They're very cute.
Yeah, I think that's sweet.
So we're going to give a real quick shout out. Since the last episode, a couple of people have supported us through Ko-fi. Again, for anybody who doesn't know what it is, it's a site where you can just, you can send some money to financially support content creators like us. And when Christina sent through a Ko-fi, she shared this note. Thanks for the great content. I've been working my way through your backlist today while working on very dull quarterly reports, and it's been much more fun than normal. Thanks for the great content and the distraction. Christina, we're so glad you enjoyed it. My condolences about quarterly reports. Those are always brutal. We don't know who the other person was because, again, didn't leave a name or message. But you know what? Thank you all the same as well. We so appreciate anyone who supports us. And no matter how you support us, maybe it's even just sending an email saying you're enjoying the show, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, telling a friend to check out the show. No matter how you support us, we truly appreciate it because it helps us grow it. And it means more people get to get queer media recommendations.
And we get to talk about it. And we do talk about it.
Every time.
Not even on the show, but like behind the scenes. Oh my gosh, this person said this. And so we get really excited when it comes to reviews and donations. Yeah. Nice.
So thank you all.
Yes.
We did not get any listener questions this time. So we're not going to answer any.
24-hour notice.
That's right. So we will just say, though, if you do have any questions that are burning that you've been meaning to ask, hit us up on all of our socials, or you can email podcast@queerlyrecommended.com. We are always happy to answer them on our episodes. So, Kris,
yes,
it's that time. What have you been reading or watching lately?
Okay, so much has happened because, of course, I have a deadline coming up. So I am glued to the television.
Yes, so that's right. That is your way.
So Glow Up season 3 came out last night, and I binged 5 episodes last night alone.
I'm so jealous.
Fucking dong.
I would have watched it with you if I knew that was what you were doing. I would have we could have hopped on Zoom. We could have watched together.
Oh my gosh, it was fabulous. I loved it. I was like, and it was so funny because I'm an expert, of course, with makeup.
Naturally,
I'm an expert.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, the blend is off. And I know what they're talking about.
Uh-huh.
Are you kidding me? Like, I haven't put mascara on in like 10 years. So
doesn't matter. You watch enough episodes of Glow Up and you're just going to know.
You learn the lingo and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's good and what's bad and what's going to work. So that was fun. So I did 5 episodes of that because I can do that. I can literally be on my couch for 5 hours and not move.
Good for you.
And then the L Word, Generation Q, season 2 started up again. So I watched the first episode of that.
Is that show good?
Here's why I like it, because there's so much representation. Back in the day, the L Word, I don't even know when it first came out, but I was younger, and it was the only lesbian rep that we had, and there was Bet, there was Alice, Tina, and Nipple Confident Shane. It was just like those were my people. And so they are also in the next generation. They have stories too, but then you also have a lot of new queer people. And the stories focus mainly on them, but you still have the backstories of the women that I admired and saw on television, and it was great. So so it was a little nostalgic for me. So I was but I was like, what the fuck? I don't remember any of this because the first season was however many years ago because COVID. So So like the recap, I'm like, okay, I remember her, I remember him, I remember them, but what the hell? What? I don't remember this part. So there was a lot of like, I had to rack my brain, like what was happening. I should have watched. I was just too excited. I had to jump right in, like jump right in. Of course.
Naturally.
So that was fun. So that started. So I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And Alone.
How's that going? How many people are left?
So, 4. I keep saying 4, but I think that's true.
Wasn't there 5 last time? And that was 2 weeks ago.
No, I think there was. Well, I don't know. I really don't know, but I think there might be 4 now. Because, like, so what happens is after 45 days, the contestants can use a net. It's some type of net, and I'm like completely drawing a blank on what it's called. But they can make a net to go fish, but they can't do it prior to that. They can do fish baskets. They can like try to fish, rod and reel type thing, but not really. They have to make it themselves. They just have fishing line. So they can find gill nets. That's what they're called, gill nets, because they catch the fish by the gill, because the fish are swimming along, and it's just like, it looks like a chain link fence, but it's net. And so they're swimming along, they're happy, bloop, 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 and then they get stuck on their gills. Yeah. So that's why it's a gill net. Oh, I knew it'd come to me. So maybe 3. We're getting close. We're getting close to the end.
Oh man.
But
I respect that these people are doing this, and I respect that like long-term camping is a thing that some people like to do. But also, as you're describing it, I was like, oh, I'd die.
That's horrible.
Very quickly.
This woman is living off of berries and something else. Like she's had, she did. There was a fish that washed up on shore, and so that was like her only protein or whatever in 45 days.
No.
And I'm like, what? Like,
no.
Again, I'm out after.
How much weight has she lost?
It's surprisingly, because the berries have a lot of calories and other things that she's finding to eat, like roots and maybe some mushrooms. So she's eating all this stuff. So she's getting like 1,500 calories a day. So she's only lost 18% of her body weight.
All right.
Which most people, there's this one guy who gained 45 pounds to be on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And he's already lost 70 pounds of it. So he's lost the 45 he gained plus an additional 25.
Oh, it's a good thing he gained that extra weight then.
Yeah. But a lot of times the contestants they're like totally fit and thin, and you're just like, you're not going to last.
No.
It will not last. And they don't. So, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy watching it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the last thing I watched this week was Disney's Jungle Cruise with The Rock and Emily Blunt. Oh,
I like her. Was it any good? I mean, I like him too. He's very charismatic.
I really like the storyline a lot. I fell asleep for like a little bit of it. I missed some of it, but there's also a gay character in it.
No.
Disney. Bravo, bravo.
Way to go.
I know. So it was entertaining. It was busy. It kept your interest, other than, the time I fell asleep, but I must have had a really long day. I don't know.
That's fair. We've been talking about watching it with the kids. It's good to hear that it's good.
Yeah, it was good. It is PG-13, and there are some dark moments. So, and there's like some stabbings, and so you don't really see blood, I don't think.
My 6-year-old might actually take it better than my 9-year-old. My 6-year-old is into creepy things, and my 9-year-old has a really tender heart. There's a lot of snakes
that come jumping out at you.
Oh no, they won't like that.
Okay, yeah. So
neither of them will like that.
Like a lot of snakes. I'm not talking like 1 or 2. We're talking like this is part of the curse. A lot of snakes.
Are there spiders?
There is a spider, and it's in a fight with a scorpion, and they're betting on it. It's like in a bar.
Oh, okay. So it's not like a spider attacking or jumping at the screen or something.
No, nothing like that.
The S word, spider, is the ultimate enemy of the Scott girls. They don't like them.
Exactly. I can handle anything. Well, that's not true. I can handle mice, snakes, anything higher up on the food chain.
Yeah.
But the lower, the worse off I spiders and bugs, I'm out.
No.
I'm out.
No. Yeah. They're very, very against them. I've gotten better with gardening. You kind of have to.
Oh, yeah.
I don't freak out. Yeah, like I don't freak out every time I see a worm anymore, or even daddy long legs. Like that's all okay. There are certain bugs though that I'm like, nope, fuck you.
Roaches,
I'm out. I hate you.
Roaches and spiders. Yeah.
Roaches are disgusting.
Yeah, and flies. Roaches and flies. Why? Why? I don't understand.
They probably have a purpose. We just don't know what it is.
Right. I know. Okay, so enough about that. What about you? What have you been reading and watching?
All right. So I've been reading a romance. So I can't remember if we've talked before about, like, I think I've mentioned before that I've wanted to start reading a little bit of gay male romance, but that's actually written by men. And I was followed on Twitter recently by one of your fellow BSB authors, Frederick Smith. Nice. And then I followed him back.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, you have a new book coming out. All right, well, let's check that out. And so it's called Busy Ain't the Half of It by Frederick Smith and his writing partner, Chaz Lamar Cruz. So there's actually two main characters who, like, you're kind of following their love story, and their nephew and uncle. And so Elijah is the nephew. He's an actor, and he actually is already in a relationship. He has a really loving boyfriend named Zaire. And they got together in a previous book called In Case You Forgot. For anybody who's wondering, rest assured, this book fully stands alone. It doesn't matter that they got together in another book. I didn't know. I haven't read it. It's very easy to jump in at this point. And then Elijah's uncle, Justin, is this like really famous news anchor in LA. He's basically like reigned the airwaves at 4 and 5 for the last 16 years. He's known for a while that he's queer. He and his wife split up kind of for each of them to go find their own queer joy a few years prior. But given what a public figure he is, he hasn't felt like he can be out comfortably. He loses his job, though, and he's like, okay, now I can date. And it's just, I'm enjoying the dual perspectives and seeing kind of the shift back and forth between the two, and seeing, like, in Elijah's case, his boyfriend wants him to move in with him, and he has a lot of angst over this because he's just kind of nervous about this idea. And then seeing Justin really like, okay, well, first of all, I'm out of work for the first time in 16 years. What do I do with that? He financially supports a lot of his extended family as well. Like, what's that going to mean? But it's really kind of lovely seeing him embrace, like, oh, maybe this is the time for me to see if there are men that I want to date. He seems to be bi or pan, which is also, I mean, I'm always happy to see bi and pan representation. So yes. I'm really enjoying it. And so far, I do recommend it. I'm probably about 30 or 40% of the way in. I had a really hard time putting it down last night. I may have stayed up a little bit later than I should have, but it's quite good. The other book that I just finished, and if you can get it in audio, absolutely get it in audio, is Just Kids by Patti Smith, and it's read by Patti Smith.
Oh, cool.
It's so freaking good. I think it came out in 2010 and it won like a massive literary award. And I mean, rightly so. Because she famously was in this like really kind of passionate relationship with Robert Mapplethorpe before he came out as gay. He died of AIDS, I think, in like 1989 or something like that. But before he died, he said to her, like, you need to write our story. And that's what this is. It's how did she, like, a bit about how she grew up and then how she moved to New York City, and how, like, they met because they had met once in this store she was working in, but then she saw him when there was this creepy author dude that wanted her to go up to his apartment. And she sees Robert from afar and she's like, can you pretend to be my boyfriend? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And then he became her actual boyfriend. And it was just this like really passionate, but often tempestuous, because, you know, he's trying to figure out his sexuality. They each have different partners. And I found it really beautiful, especially seeing how important they were to each other's lives, even when they weren't romantically involved anymore. And so I think for anybody who's interested in, like, again, that up and coming punk scene in the 1970s, you have, if you haven't read this, you absolutely have to. If you're interested in, you know, queer artists, this is a fabulous one. Because again, Robert Mapplethorpe, if you like autobiographies, like, it's so good. It's really beautiful. Yeah. It's one of the best books that I've read this year for sure. Nice. And then I watched a film last night that
you did a lot last night.
I did.
I watched 5 hours of Glow Up, and
right?
you like did and read and like everything last night.
That's right. So it's a documentary called Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood, with the subtitle The Secret Lives of Classic Hollywood Stars. And It's by a guy, and I'm saying this slowly because I forget his last name. So it's about a guy named Scotty Bowers. And he was this like, grew up in the Midwest farm boy type thing. I think his family moved to a city at some point. Yeah, right. Went off to World War II. When he came back from World War II, he went to LA, where he worked at a gas station and very quickly started engaging in sex work with really famous celebrities, but not only himself. People kind of realized that, like, oh, he's good at fixing people up. And so he would connect men and women who were not just in Hollywood. There were also like politicians and whatever, but mainly Hollywood. And this book is really focused on Hollywood. Well, there's a book as well, which I'll get to that in a minute. But he was hooking up these really famous people who couldn't be out because, in the they explained that I think it came about in the 1930s that they started having morality clauses in contracts for like directors and film actors and actresses. And so anybody who was queer couldn't be out anymore in a way that they previously had been able to. It was, they showed this side of Hollywood that had been actually like quite hedonistic prior to that point, which I never knew and found really interesting and surprising. And he referred to the acts themselves as tricks, but then he referred to some of the sex workers as tricks. And so it's a little hard to it's like, how do I use the language he was using in a way that's going to make sense? I don't know that I actually can. So yeah, he would connect, really famous actors and actresses. Typically, for the most part, he was talking about with same-sex sex workers so that they could actually continue to experience the kind of sexual encounters that they wanted to in a way that was safe, that they couldn't do publicly and out in the open. And I thought I was kind of two minds about it, because on the one hand, I mean, I appreciate that he was able to give them that sort of freedom and safety and ability to have the types of sexual encounters that they needed and wanted to have, even if they couldn't have open relationships. But I also wonder, is it okay that he's outing all of these people? Because he was talking very, very frankly about like Charles Lawton and Cary Grant and Cary Grant's boyfriend, whose name I can't remember, Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn was the one. I mean, the reason I heard about this film was I heard it referenced in relation to her being a lesbian, which I only learned about a few years ago. And for me, she was my favorite actress from when I was 14. Like, I saw the Philadelphia Story and I was just fucking sunk. Like, I had to see as much of her stuff as I possibly could. And of course, now as an adult who understands my queerness, I'm like, is there a part of me that saw something?
Probably, for sure.
And connect, like, but what do you think about the idea of like, is it okay for him to do a tell-all like this?
I think that is a tough question, because I think the temperature of just queerness in Hollywood and queerness in life now obviously is a lot better, to where you can. I don't. Maybe yes, I am okay with it. I feel like when you're in Hollywood, you're in the spotlight. That's what you want in life. You want to be famous, you want to whatever, and you kind of give up privacy. That's just a thing that happens. You don't want to, but it does happen. And I think that maybe once you're gone from this world, like, I don't care if the world, knows that I'm gay, but, it's not going to hurt anybody, or is it? Is it going to hurt somebody? Is it hurting people?
I don't know. And he actually responds to, so I said there was a book, and I haven't read the book yet. I've just started listening to it. My library has a copy of it, and he's at a book signing though. And somebody comes up and basically says, how dare you share this? And it's not somebody who's connected to any of them. It's just like a concerned member of the public. And so Scotty says, well, I wanted to do it so that people could understand that, Hollywood was actually a lot more queer than people realize. And I'm paraphrasing here.
Right.
But he basically said, so that people don't feel alone, because this book was also published in 2012. And I also get that like 2012 is very different from 2021 when I'm watching it now, although I still feel generally kind of strongly that you don't out people. I mean, there's one person I would love to out.
Out. Okay.
And it's somebody in politics, and I'm not going to say who it is.
You'll have to tell me later because you know I can't.
I don't want to get a letter. Ooh. Is a thing, right? Like I do not want to get. I will tell you later. But
yeah,
so he was telling the guy this, right? And the guy said, well, what about their families? What if they don't want them to know that they were gay? And he just shot back immediately. Well, what's wrong with being gay?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Why I don't.
My microphone was like, fuck yes. And it decided to drop at that moment.
You did drop the mic.
I did. Oh, literal mic drop. I didn't even touch it. The mic dropped itself. What's wrong with being gay? Boom. Oh, let's catch it and put it back up. We're recording a podcast.
So, I mean, I kind of see that too. I mean, I understand the rights of a family. Like if somebody said, like my grandmother or grandfather was gay, how would that feel? You know, this is exactly what's happening in the show called The White Lotus on HBO. This the character who happens to be the main character of one of my big recommendation this week. He's in this in the series, and he finds out that his father died of AIDS back in like 1989, maybe 90 something. And this whole time he thought his dad had cancer. They told him that his dad had cancer. And so then his uncle calls him, and they're to wish him a happy birthday or something. He had a cancer scare. So he called his uncle to find out what kind of cancer his father had. He's like, what are you talking about? Your dad had AIDS. And so he had to he's on vacation with his family, and he's trying to deal with the fact that he might have cancer. Plus, find out that your dad is gay. You know,
that is
died because
brutal.
of AIDS. And so, yeah, so there's that whole thing. I guess I'm being heartless by saying that it's okay. But at the same time, would I be okay if somebody in my family was gay, or there's something controversial about them if it came out? Like, how would I feel about it? But I agree with him. I mean, it's not wrong to be gay. It's not bad to be gay. So that's a good retort. I support that response.
I think so too. Now, the one thing I walked away from it really wanting to know, though, was like, how did Scotty identify himself? He never placed a label on himself the whole film. And it's clear that he had slept with hundreds of men. But he's married. Like, we meet his wife, and she didn't know anything until the book.
No.
He never told her. No, he never told her. They got married in 1984. And he had another partner before that who was a woman who they were like all but married, and they had a child together and everything like that. But it sounds like it's not super clear. He either got out of the business or he changed up how he was involved in it when the AIDS crisis hit. Okay. And then, he got married to her in 1984. But she was like, at one point she said something about how she kind of wished she knew before they got together, because she doesn't know how she would have handled that information.
That's true. That's a tough one.
Yeah. Like, I thought it was really interesting.
But don't you think that if you're like really in love with somebody, you would kind of know, like, if they had a past that hundreds of people slept with them, or you would just know, like, some random people would come up, hey, thanks for hooking me up with Bob, I really appreciate it. Or, you know, phone calls in the middle of the night. Who was that? Oh, it was, Regina. It's okay.
I don't know. I mean, this guy was a vault until he wrote this book. He was a total vault. Unless they lived like largely separate lives. There are some partners that do that.
Right. Or maybe was he wealthy? Is he wealthy? Was he wealthy?
He has 2 houses in LA. Okay, now there's one that he bought with all of the money that he made doing, celebrities mostly. No judging. I mean, good for him. And he was very clear that is where he got the money from, because he talked about how he would charge $20 a trick. And he's like, I bought this house with all those $20. And then the other one was gifted to him. This is the other part that I've been left wondering since last night, because he talks about this guy. He was an actor in, like, they're not even B movies. They're like whatever's under that. And he basically described him as being like his top customer. And then somebody else talks about how that guy described him as being his lover. And this guy left him 2 houses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. One, which I think he sold. And the other, when he dies, reverts to this guy's nephew, who is Corbin Bernsen. Wow. Yeah. And then left him like a bunch of other stuff. And I'm like, you don't just leave somebody that much unless there's something. Right. So I'm sure this guy is dead, but like, I have questions, and I'm hoping the book is going to answer my questions. I will report back. I do need to give some absolutely massive content warnings or trigger warnings for this documentary. There's 2 particularly difficult things that it talks about. The first, he talks about how his daughter died because of a botched abortion. Yeah. So he doesn't go into extreme detail or anything like that, but if that's likely to be a trigger for you, you might want to avoid. And he also talks about being molested as a child, and also that he kind of goes on from there to charge priests for sex when he's a fairly young boy, probably around 10 or 11.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was very, very jarring, because you spend the first half of it. This was my experience anyway. I spent the first half of it going, oh yeah, okay, he fucked all these people. He fucked all these men in Hollywood. Okay, no big deal. Oh, okay, and he also arranged all of these liaisons. Okay, that's fine. And then you get to, like, he talks about how his childhood is very happy, and he describes those sexual experiences as positive. And the interviewer even says, do you realize that what you're describing most people would describe as abuse? And it's just this clear dissonance between him and then how everybody else perceives it. And the other cool thing about him, I feel like I'm giving everything away. But the other cool thing about him is that he was interviewed by Dr. Kinsey a bunch of times.
Oh, wow.
And so talked about how he helped contribute to Kinsey's research. Fascinating.
So, but here's another thing too. So, like, if you write a book and you add a bunch of people and stuff, I mean, how do you know what's real? Like, is it true?
I wonder if that's part of why they did the documentary, because he brought back some of the old tricks or rent boys or whatever you want to call them, I guess. And a few of them were like, yeah, I read it. It's all true. Okay. Like,
because that would be my fear, or my, oh yeah, that's not true. How do we know this, type thing.
Right. Well, although, I mean, in some cases, I think some are not going to be surprised. Like, everybody knows that Rock Hudson was gay. And then I think it's a fairly open thing about Cary Grant. And even Katharine Hepburn, it makes me kind of want to go back and reread the autobiography that she read through this different lens. Because I know she talked about, like, growing up wearing pants and telling her family to call her Jimmy. And I think it was a different book that I believe I even have in my basement. Because, like I said, massive fan. It came out shortly after she died, but I saw somebody reference it in an article I read recently where she's being interviewed and she's talking about her personal secretary. And she said, she's the Alice B. Toklas to my Gertrude Stein, which I think is one of those, like, if you know, you know.
Right.
So I think he was probably telling the truth there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So I think there's an interest. We put so much into Hollywood, and we're so interested in actors and actresses and their stories and how they got to where they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, top 10. How many of your top 10 lists is either an actor or an actress? I have a lot of singers. I have a lot of musicians. I have a lot of actresses. I do.
Okay. Which ones?
We can't because, it's obviously going to change after every time I watch something new. It rotates. People rotate in and out.
Who's your most recent?
Who's my most recent musician?
Sure.
Or most recent musician? Well, one person who is always on my list and has been ever since I was a wee little tiny teenager. Let's say teenager. Natalie Merchant. And I think it's the voice. It's for sure the voice, and just the words and the beauty. And I love when a musician has a song and you think it's a beautiful song, and then you listen to the words and you're like, fuck. And it's about something totally different, and you don't realize it until you're older and you're singing it and you put the words together. Dar Williams is like that as well.
Oh, I love her.
I love Dar.
Oh my God, The Ocean? That's one of the best songs ever.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Dar Williams. We need to get Dar Williams on the show, because I have been a darling since the 90s. Like, I was 2 and I was a darling at 2.
I'm trying to think when I started. I probably was since the very, very end of the 90s.
For me, I think I almost want to say it was 1993, and I want to say it was. I can see this CD. I had the CD. I can see the CD cover of her, but it's not really her. Like, I was like a big song. And
also gorgeous.
Right. Like, I mean, name a song that's horrible by Dar. You can't. It's impossible. Like,
no, there's just like my favorites or the rest of them.
Right, exactly. So, like,
the Christians and the Pagans.
That is a brilliant song. I love that song so much because it makes me laugh every time I hear it. Every single time. Love it. Absolutely love it. So Dar's on my list, and it was so funny because I went to her concert in Lawrence, Kansas. Believe it or not, is a big kind of mecca of up and coming musicians, or musicians that come through, especially folk music. Yeah. And I was having a nice dinner. One of my friends and I went and had dinner before the Dar concert, and she's like sitting in the next table over, and we're just like, "How's everybody else? Let's Dar." I'm the kind of person that I.
Did you go meet her?
Cool. Oh yeah, I've met her several times. So, but it was funny because we're like, "Hey, do you want to come join us?" Because she was all by herself, and I'm like, "Do you want to come join us?" Because I didn't get up and go over there. I'm like, "Hey, Dar, do you want to come join us?" I mean, in a nice way, not a disrespectful like, "Woohoo, Dar!" It wasn't like that.
Did she?
No, she didn't. But she thanked us, and it was really sweet. She was just a very, very nice person, and and that was like the time when in college, you were trying to find out. Am I queer? Am I not queer? And Dar Williams kind of flipped it on you. And then it's so funny because her concert, she goes, "Cat's out of the bag. I'm straight."
Didn't everybody think she was gay?
Everybody thought she was gay. And so she goes to this concert. We're laughing. Because, like, by that time, you kind of grew with her and you knew, you found out more about her. And of course, the internet is, a vast vacuum of information. So you found out more about her. This was the time before you could find out a lot of stuff on people, So I think there's just a curiosity. We want to know who's gay. We want to know, like, who can I put on my list? And, this is important stuff. Like, if I could meet them, that kind of stuff. So I do have a lot of musicians. I think Dar would probably be on my list.
That's fair.
In and out. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, her voice.
It's amazing.
It deserves a spot.
Just fun. She's just a fun person. You could tell she loves her job.
Yeah.
She loves doing what she does. And I love that people are like that, who don't take it so seriously and have a good time. And I just, I'm a darling for sure.
So Kris, what is your official recommendation?
Okay. My official recommendation this week is a movie called Cowboys. And you could rent it on Amazon Prime. I think it's like $3.99, maybe. Director and writer is Anna Kerrigan. And I'm going to read you the little movie blurb. Somebody needs to tell me what this thing's called. It's not a movie blurb. Synopsis? What is it called?
I don't know what it's called for movies.
I'm going to call it a blurb.
You do that.
Okay. A troubled but well-intentioned father who has recently separated from his wife runs off with his trans son into the Montana wilderness after his ex-wife's refusal to let their son live as his authentic self. Okay.
That sounds pretty.
I know. So this is, I don't know how to pronounce his last name because you and I are really bad at we're just going to wing it. And his name is Steve Zahn, maybe Zahn.
Oh yeah. Zahn? I think that is his name.
Zahn. He's the one I was talking about in the White Lotus, the HBO series. Like he's the person he was in like a bajillion different shows and you recognize his face.
Yeah, one of those, hey, it's that guy.
Yeah, exactly. He's never really been up front and center and, a movie that stands out. He plays Troy, who is a big-hearted guy with a drinking problem. He's bipolar, and he has a prison record. So you would think, just by saying all that, you're like, oh, he's a little sketchy. But you love him. You absolutely learn to love him, because even through all of his problems, his heart is true. Like, you see the love he has for his son, and he'll do anything he can to keep that relationship going. Like, he's just a good dad. And Sally, he was once married to Sally, who's played by Jillian Bell. Do you know who Jillian Bell is?
Oh, I feel like I do.
Okay. She, again, just like Steve, has been in a bajillion different movies, and usually is kind of a funny character, but plays a really serious role in this movie. So on the weekends, despite any court order, she allows Troy to see his. Okay, now this is where it gets tricky. Child. He allows him to see his child, 10 years old. Their child is 10 years old. And so Sally knows that it's important to the child that they maintain their relationship. So she allows it, even though he's just kind of unpredictable, because you never know if he's on his meds. You never know, like, if he's done something wrong. She's just kind of trusting him to, because she trusts him with the kid. So she's okay to let him see the child. So I'm going to tell this whole recommendation in a series of quotes, because I think the writing on this was really, really good. So, okay, their son's name is Joe, which is short for Josie. And he's depressed, and he wants to wear jeans and play with toy guns and slingshots, but he's not even allowed out of the house unless he's wearing a dress. And Sally's very adamant about it. So, when Joe and Troy are sitting in his pickup truck, Joe says, "I'm not a tomboy. A tomboy is just another kind of girl. I'm not a girl. I'm a boy. Sometimes I think aliens put me in a girl body as a joke. I'm not confused. I've known my entire life, and it's not my fault." And it's just beautiful. And at first you see Troy going, I'll talk to your mom. You won't have to wear dresses. And he's like, no, I'm serious. And I love that this 10-year-old child has that much trust in her dad and their relationship, that he can come out like that. I mean, it's beautiful. It was just a beautiful moment. So Troy goes in and talks to Sally and says, look, we really need to talk about this. And Sally's like, it's just a phase. Everybody goes through phases, and she'll be fine. Like, she's adamant about calling her son she. Her name is Josie.
Oh, just constantly misgendering and dead naming.
Completely dead naming. And when they're having this conversation, it gets heated, of course. And Troy, the dad, he's just like, we have to do this. We have to let Joe be who he wants to be, who he really is. And Sally's like, look, you don't get to be the good parent here. Josie sees you, and you're off having a good time with your friends, and you go and you party and you drink and you camp and you shoot guns and you're just a cowboy, and that's what Josie sees. So Troy says, this is not about you. Like, it's a brilliant line. Like, it is not about you. This is about our son. I love that line. So Sally, like, kicks him out, says it's best that you don't spend time here for a while. That's just like, no, you don't get to see Joe. She goes into Joe's bedroom, who of course heard this whole thing. Yeah. And says, God has a plan for you. Follow God's plan.
Oh, no.
Of course, she brings in religion to this. So anyway, so one of the fights, Joe grabs a pair of scissors. The parents are fighting. So he grabs a pair of scissors, runs into the bathroom, locks the door, and cuts off his hair. Real short. It's cute. Absolutely adorable cut, but still. So when Troy goes back to try to visit, Sally says, I'm just starting to get Joe back to normal. And he gets mad, and he's like, Joe isn't a lump of clay. You can just pound into something. Joe is Joe, and we can either accept that or we can fuck him up. And the mom's like, you messed her up. So this is all going down. And so he's just like, Troy's like, I'm out. So he gets in his car, and another fight, and Joe comes running out, and he's like, Dad, I want to go with you. Take me with you. So gets in the car, locks it, and he's really thinking about it. And the mom Sally's like, look, if you leave, I'm calling the cops.
Of course she is.
Yeah, because, you're kidnapping our child.
They have a custody arrangement. Rights. Yeah.
Right. And it's not even court ordered because of his record and his, unstable. Yeah. She just like lets him see him just because she knows that they love each other so much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the one redeeming thing about Sally. Troy decides to go ahead and run away with Joe to Canada. There's no plan. Yeah. So something happens and he gets off his meds, Troy, because he's bipolar. I think he's bipolar. And so he gets off his meds and it's real obvious to Joe. Joe's like, what's going on, Dad? You're different. And, he's trying to, look, let's just get to Canada. We'll work it out. Everything's fine. So their truck breaks down and he sees a friend in the, I don't know, neighboring area and steals his horse and they go off to Canada. They try to. Okay. They're on their way to Canada.
On a horse.
And get this. Fuck me. Aunt Lydia from Handmaid's Tale is the cop / FBI / ranger who chases them. And the whole time I'm like, that's Aunt Lydia from Handmaid's Tale. Anyway, there's 3 ways that this movie could end. 3 ways. Only 3 ways.
Right.
That this movie could end. And it ended better than I expected. So I recommend it.
Does Joe get to be Joe?
Well, I think everybody has to watch the movie to find that out.
She's nodding, people.
Why are you giving it away?
Because I want to make sure that it's actually going to be safe for trans people who want to watch it.
It's great. I would not recommend a movie that wasn't safe or a good ending. Truly, the best possible ending came out of this.
Good.
The whole time I'm like, something bad's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen. And something bad does happen. But it's the best bad case scenario. Best worst best case scenario. Whatever. It's one of those. But anyway. So that's my recommendation. What about yours? What is your big recommendation this week?
Okay. So I was thinking about it. And I had not finished anything recently, like since the last episode, that I was like, oh yeah, that's going to be the one. So then I thought, okay, what have I loved that I haven't recommended yet? And I was like, oh shit.
Ooh,
I have a brilliant idea that I think would tie nicely with talking about the documentary that we talked about. And it is a lesbian pulp novel called Beebo Brinker by Ann Bannon. And for people who have heard the name and are like, but I thought that was the name of a character. It is both the name of a character that shows up in a bunch of her books, and it is also the name of the prequel to all of the other books. And I am recommending the prequel. In this one, we see who Beebo is when she shows up in New York City. She kind of comes from that farm life. I think her name was actually Betty or something like that when she was growing up. But she gets to New York City and starts to kind of figure out, oh no, maybe I'm queer. And it's like, oh yeah, no, you're absolutely a lesbian and you're going to become like the butch that millions of women dream about for decades. And in this particular book, just as she's sort of figuring out, yes, I'm a lesbian, she just happens to meet this actress who's in town, and her name is Venus Bogardus, and she's bisexual, and they take up this really passionate affair. Beebo goes with Venus out to California, and it's kind of like what happens from there. And I think it actually does kind of pair nicely if you do want to watch that documentary, because you sort of see like, what does this closeted actress have to do? She's married. Her husband knows about all of this happening. And it's like, what are the rules for making it work in Hollywood at that point? So I read that one last because you can actually pick up all of her books minus one that's gone way out of print and is never coming back because it's about a brother and sister being together for some reason. Pulps were weird. Pulps were wild. Anything could happen in pulps. But the rest of her books, you can get, actually, I got an ebook omnibus of all 5 of them. And I think it's about $20, which is not bad, like for 5 books. And I actually recommend getting the whole omnibus. I loved most of it. I'll explain what I didn't love in a minute. But it starts with Odd Girl Out, which is where we first meet Laura. And Laura and Beebo end up together, like in later books. But this is where Laura and her roommate Beth kind of fall for each other, and they have this affair in college, and it goes on from there. Like they're all lesbian pulps, but actually written by a woman. Very, very raw. Just, I was shocked at how they didn't feel incredibly dated. I mean, in some ways they are obviously very dated because they are the products of their time. Right. Odd Girl Out, I think, came out in 1957 or 1958. It was the second best-selling paperback of its year.
Wow.
Not of the pulps, just like of all the paperbacks.
Oh. Wow.
And I had the opportunity to interview Ann Bannon for my old podcast, Les Do Books. And I think it's probably the interview that I'm still proudest and most excited of that I did. I did a lot that I'm tremendously proud of over there, but it was so incredible to talk to her for an hour. And she talked about all the letters she got from lesbians saying, I thought I was alone. I didn't know that I wasn't the only person that was like this. Like, she saved so many lives. And even another interview that I was quite proud of doing, Catherine V. Forrest talked about how Odd Girl Out saved her life. Like, that was the book. Like, she had thought about jumping off the bridge in Detroit. And like I said, I grew up in Windsor, Detroit. I know the bridge she's talking about. But she read that book and it helped her see that she wasn't alone. And she then went on to write like the coming out book for an entire generation of lesbians with Curious Wine. So like the footprint that Ann Bannon has is mighty.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And absolutely well worth reading. The one thing that I'll say is there's one book in there that is fucking dark and it is real rough. It's called Women in the Shadows. I've read interviews where she talks about how she took all of the angst that she had being in a deeply unhappy marriage to a man and like shoved it in that book and put all of it onto Beebo. And so I think before you go on to read, if you do go to pick it up, you need to understand that themes include, and like I said, massive trigger warnings for alcoholism, domestic violence in a lesbian relationship, corrective rape gets brought up. 2 dogs get murdered, and we get full ass details about one of them is horrifying.
Oh,
but I mean, it does also show, and it's not just that book. It shows an interracial relationship, which I think is pretty progressive for then. Especially we see, I don't think it's just in that one, but like we actually see a lavender marriage, which is like a marriage between a gay man and a lesbian. So that they can kind of move safely and have their dalliances, but have that security and protection of a marriage there. So feel free to skip that one unless you are an absolute completionist. I am sometimes a completionist, and I was here. I didn't enjoy the book, but I found it impossible to put down. So I don't know if that's not really an endorsement as much as I'm just sharing information. But the other books were all, I love them. And especially Odd Girl Out and the one called Beebo Brinker. I think both of them were just so incredible. Just like really great kind of records of what it could have been like to be a lesbian in the 1950s and 60s. None of them are romances, is the other thing that I'll say.
It's fiction.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's fiction, but I would say that they're not romances, nor can you actually expect romance out of pulps at that time anyway, because I'm trying to remember, Rachel Spangler talked about it because she talked about Vin Packer's book. What was it called? Spring Fire or something like that. But Vin Packer also wrote a pulp that came out not too long before Odd Girl Out, but it was definitely before, and about how they couldn't have happy endings. Like that was why, like there were legal reasons to do with like you couldn't ship the books out of state if there was a happy ending in a same-sex couple. And so that's why there's all these books where there's some kind of a punishment, whether it's, well, there's definitely going to be some kind of a breakup, but they're either going to be institutionalized, one of them's going to be killed, one of them's going to kill themselves, like something like that. And that doesn't happen here.
Good.
Odd Girl Out, no, Laura and Beth are not able to be together. And I don't feel like that's really a spoiler given the historical context of happy endings are not allowed. But to me, I found the ending to that book so hopeful and
hope.
inspiring. Yeah, absolutely. Hope.
It's my thing.
That's our theme. So yeah, definitely go get yourself the Beebo Brinker omnibus. And even if you only read the first and last books in that collection, you're gonna have a good time. They're just beautiful. They're beautiful. They're so good. That is all for this episode. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. If you have enjoyed the show and you have not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast so you can get a notification every time we release an episode. And if you do have a friend that you think would like the show, please go ahead and tell them all about it. We would love to come at their ears as well. I don't know why I said it like that.
It's all right. And if you want to connect with us on your favorite social media sites, look for Queerly Recommended on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and follow us or email us at podcast@queerlyrecommended.com. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the voting age.
I think so too.
Podcast is, you know what? By the end of the year, it's going to be ready to rent a car in the United States.
It's going to be ready to run for president.
How old do you have to be?
35.
That'll be next year.
Be ready? Next year. Okay, back.
Because we're doing them every other week.
Yes. It's already, it is August. Where's the time gone? Yeah, so next year we'll be able to run for president.